We bought companies, we sold companies. We ended up selling that company to basically the largest financial institution in the entire world. And after we had grown it to a $10 billion organization, we sold it for well over $100 million.
On our next episode of the Mindset Shift podcast, we are interviewing the co-founder of NewStory Lending, a dad at 16, incarcerated at 21, the ballroom clerk, to co-founder of NewStory Lending. Tune in as we dig deep into the mindset transformational story of Juan Rodas. Welcome back to the Mindset Shift podcast, where we explore the mental shifts that transform ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies. I'm your host and your favorite realtor, Tony Medina with Century 21. And today I'm honored to sit down with someone whose story is a blueprint for perseverance, grit, and transformation. From file room clerk to co-founder of NewStory Lending and soon to be author with degrees from George Mason and Johns Hopkins University, Juan is leading change in the mortgage industry, breaking barriers around affordability housing, and giving back to youth, all while being a proud #girl dad, a CrossFit competitor, and a passionate philanthropist. So let's dig into the mindset behind the mission. Juan, welcome to the show.
Oh man, I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, well thank you for being here.
You made me sound phenomenal right there.
Well, you are phenomenal. So let's go ahead and dig in. So I want to start by just talking a little bit about your foundation. So what was it like growing up in a multi-generational family, and how did that shape your values growing up?
Yeah, I loved it, to be honest with you. Like we grew up in apartments, right? So like it wasn't until I was like 13 or 14 years old that my family was eventually able to buy like a single family home, and we were able to move into that. And so I look back and I think about like all of the family, and even though we were just like in a confined space, so to speak, it was like one of those things where there were so many people around us all the time. There was family around us all the time. There were so many people in the neighborhood. There was kids. There was playing outside. There was like all these things that I looking at my life now and my kids, look, I was able to give them financially something that was better, but I feel like that piece is like missing, that family unit and all of that. And family is extremely important to me. My grandmother, who actually just turned 92 yesterday, has lived with me my entire life, or lived with my family, right? My entire life. And so she's like a second mother to me. And then my dad and my mom been together. I've always seen them together. I have an older brother, older sister. I'm actually the only one that was born, for the most part. I have a couple other cousins here and there, but I was pretty much the last one in my generation and the one that was born here in the United States. But my brother, my sister, basically all of my cousins, everyone else was born in Ecuador. So it was like a running joke when we were younger, like let Juan do it because he won't get deported. You know what I'm saying? but everyone else needs to be careful, right? But we've always been super close, man.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What did watching your parents, because your parents bought their first house when you were young, right? So what did that teach you about the possibility, and what did that do for you along your journey?
They've always instilled hard work in me. Always. Like I literally witnessed them, working 2-3 jobs. They would take me with them. I remember, and we would go. They'd had like jobs like cleaning banks and like house cleaning type thing. We'd go to people's other houses and stuff like that they would clean, and I would go with them. You know what I'm saying? And they would do little odd jobs like moving people's stuff and just doing all types of things. And eventually, my dad actually was a pizza delivery driver. My mother was babysitted kids, right? And so growing up, I saw like that work ethic in them, and it was extremely good to see. But they couldn't. I didn't know better, but it was very difficult for them to get a home, right? Like it was until again. They had been in this country for like probably, 20 years by the time they eventually got to the point where they were able to buy a home. And it was an exciting time, and it's the same home that they bought is the same home that they live in today. Right? They've been there the whole time. Like they're very loyal to things and loyal to people. But man, hard work is like the biggest thing that I've always witnessed. And so that's what's made me like in general. I think I applied it to probably some wrong things at certain points in life, but I never lost the fact that like I'm going to work hard. And especially if you tell me that like I can't do something, that only motivates me more, you know?
So speaking of that,
Yeah.
how did you navigate those early setbacks, especially with, society's expectations and judgments? How did you navigate that growing up?
So, look, I think you just fall into that. Unfortunately, like I think in the communities that like we come from, um, there's a lot of minorities, a lot of that type of thing. But not just that. I just think it was more normal when I was growing up to, not go to college, right? Like nobody talked about going to college, right? Like unfortunately, getting locked up was like almost like a rite of passage. Like it was like, oh, it's now that person's turn. So most people were getting locked up. Most people were, hustling or doing different things. Like that's just kind of the environment. And don't get me wrong. It's not like I lived in like the worst, neighborhood and they were murdering people every 2 seconds, but it's just the crowd, you know what I'm saying? And I chose to do things, on my own. It's not like no one forced me to do anything, but all that stuff you see, gangs and this and this and that. And so early on, I was always like an entrepreneur. So like when I was about 8 years old, like I opened up kind of like a little mini business and I was like selling hats and like I was like doing things like that. I always had that mentality of like figuring out how to grind on my own and understanding like margin. Like at that time I didn't know, but thinking now, right? Like understanding margins, understanding how to structure things, understanding like consignment and wholesale. And like I was doing those things when I was 8 years old and that just kind of naturally happened. And then I think everybody loses their innocence at one point in their lifetime, right? And that happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My brother had a girlfriend at the time. He had also gotten her pregnant when he was in high school, and unfortunately, she committed suicide while pregnant with my nephew. And it was definitely a very, very difficult time for me and my family, my brother, etc. And I would say like that was again where I just lost my innocence. And I think I gravitated a little bit more towards like street stuff and got involved in hustling and doing things like that. And I started that really, really early on. Like I'm talking about, 12, 13 years old. I was already doing things like that. I was already doing things that 21-year-olds like shouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying? And so that was what that life was about at that
Where was
point.
this?
This was in Falls Church,
This
Virginia.
was in Falls Church.
Yeah. So this like 10 miles outside of DC, basically.
Okay.
So it was like that whole time frame. And then I ended up having a kid when I was about 16 years old. And then I got in the mortgage actually when I was like 18. I started in the file room, like you mentioned earlier, but I hadn't left what I was doing. I was like almost conflicted between worlds. And right around that time is when, some people had gotten caught up in some things and couldn't take the time themselves. So they started telling. And then I got caught up in being told on basically. And then I ended up getting incarcerated, catching a felony. And that was also another hard time in my life. You know what I'm saying? And at that time, I think you think that mostly things are like over, right? And recidivism is a real thing. It's something I've witnessed my whole life. So it's just natural. Like, oh, you're going to go in, you're going to get out, and you're going to go right back to it. And I just witnessed that over and over. And I decided I ain't gonna say like, oh, I got out and I was a saint. Like I got out and I was still, struggling a little bit, but like it took people to help me and lift me up. Like I've gotten so far in life through people helping me. And it took a guy that was working at that mortgage company that really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and basically gave me an opportunity. They got me on a work release program. And then I ended up staying at that mortgage company. I ended up staying at that company for like 15 years, and grew to be an executive of one of those companies.
What was the name of that company?
First Guarantee Mortgage Corporation.
First Guaranteed Mortgage Corporation. Now, how old were you when you became a father? 16.
I found out when I was 16. I remember I turned 17 at the end of September, and my daughter was born beginning of November. So like 30, 45 days after my 17th birthday.
So you were 17, just turned 17. Yeah. And then how long after was it that you were incarcerated?
It was, I think she was about 5 or 6. I actually remember vividly, I missed her first day of school. I was incarcerated for her first day of school. And I never, I fucks with me till this day. You know what I'm saying? So like, But yeah, she was like 5 or 6 or something like that.
So
at
you were
that
about
time.
what, 21, 22?
Yeah, I was about 21, 22 when I had 21-ish when that happened. Yeah.
So during that time, what would you say was like the major mindset shift that you had to make? You know, becoming a father, now you're incarcerated, and then a man steps into your life that helps kind of change everything. What was your mindset like, and how were you changing during those times?
I think I was still struggling, to be honest with you. I think I was, when I first started there, I was like, 99% in the street and 1% like here, right? And I think that percentage shifted over time in the other direction. And I ain't gonna say like when I first got out, like I said, I wasn't 100%, saved as they say, right? But I think I was just of a different mindset. I had a lot of time over my head. Like if something would have happened, my probation that I was on, like I would have gotten incarcerated for like 7 years. You know what I'm saying? And I witnessed people getting conspiracy charges 10 years all around that time. And I was just like, man, do I really want to even do that? And I had that opportunity with that company. And it wasn't like they were paying me a lot of money. I just think I saw the opportunity. And I was very thankful for, his name was Brian Miller. He's actually just died about a year or two ago from brain cancer. But he was like a savior for me. He was like an angel in my life. And he basically, helped me navigate transitioning through different departments, and that hard work ethic that I had from when I was a kid just put me in a situation where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus hard on this. So I literally went from the file room to, final docs to, funding and processing and originating and secondary marketing. Capital markets ended up being, and secondary marketing ended up being like my biggest niche. And to me, like, I hate to say it, but it was just like hustling, right? It was like, it's the same concepts, you know what I'm saying? It's just different. You just apply it differently. And I was always good at that. And I've always been good at numbers. And so, I accepted the help, and I committed, and I worked hard, and I would get good at a certain department, and they would basically either let me run it or transition to a different area. So I got to see like all of mortgage for real. And it was, to me, it wasn't, I met people, especially at that point in my life, where it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like, yeah, but you've been doing the same thing for 30 years. It's about what you've been exposed to, right? And I was exposed to a lot in like a very short period of time. We did all origination channels, from both retail to consumer direct to wholesale to non-delegated to delegated. We were an investor. We were selling, like, it was, we bought companies, we sold companies. We ended up selling that company to basically the largest financial institution in the entire world. And after we had grown it to a $10 billion organization, we sold it for well over $100 million back in 2015. And I stayed there my entirety was about 15 years is how long I stayed there. The other thing while I was there was the CEO of the company had actually approached me like in my late 20s and was like, hey man, you're doing so good. Like, we want to pay for your school. We want you to go to school. And again, like, that wasn't something that I ever even thought of doing. Most people that I know didn't graduate high school. And I was like, okay. And I accepted it. Again, I accepted the help. And I went on to get a bachelor's degree from George Mason University in minor in economics. And then I graduated on finance, bachelor's in finance. And then I went on to get a master's in finance from Johns Hopkins University right after that. And I just kind of,
so was this after the first after the 15 years or during the 15 years?
During the 15 years. So I was incarcerated around 2008. And then about 2011-ish is when I started going to school. And then I went to school from about 2011 until about 2018, and had another kid, did all the things that I'm saying, like was a very, busy executive, and did all these things during that time frame. So it's why I have zero sympathy for people when they tell me they don't have time to do something. I'm like, there's always time to do something. And to somebody who has lost time and had time taken away from them, that's the most valuable. This is why I'm here today, right? Like, it's why I'm out there doing these things, because I think, sure, you can donate money and you can do those things, but to me, that's the easy way out. Like, if you're giving your time to something, again, as somebody who's had that taken away from you, that's the most valuable thing.
So true.
Yeah.
So how did you balance that then? Because like, a lot of people will say, I don't have time,
Yeah.
but you just said, hey, my time was taken away. Don't don't tell me that.
Yeah.
How did you find the balance,
Yeah.
through the chaos?
Yeah.
It's running a big company, studying, going to school, being a dad. How did
Yeah.
you balance all of that?
I will say that there is imbalance. I will say that, right? I will say that I haven't mastered I'm going to be good at everything at
Mm,
the same exact time. I think I'm not saying that's not possible. I just think it's difficult. And if and anybody who is really, really, really good at that thing, it's likely that they are spending the most amount of time on that thing, right? And so, but what I have learned over time is I just matured. So, like when I was younger, with my first daughter, who's 23 now, like I was so stuck on um me growing up. I had love, I had family, but we didn't have the most financial, stability, right? So my like love language to her was the financial piece. So I did all these things basically in the streets and made sure that what I'm saying, we didn't have, we eating filet mignons and then the Jordans and the
yeah.
this and the that. And that was the immaturity of two things: me focusing on the wrong thing, right? But also believing that being a good father was providing and giving everything that I didn't never had, when really it was about all she ever wanted was my time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when I had my second child, I spent more time with her, but now my focus shifted to school and work, and I've always been very driven by those things. And I also think that I focused a lot on school because I had this negative thing basically on my record that I tried to do everything humanly possible to like drown it with all these positive, paper things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so again, there's just different phases in life, and I think that again, there's imbalances, but I shifted my mindset in terms of how I was as a father, and my older daughter even notices it, right? I mean, she's notices that I'm different with my younger one than I was, but it's also like, oh yeah, but not that she's mad about it. It's just there's different phases in your life,
Yeah.
and
But what inspired that?
I just I think it's again just maturity, right? I think it's maturity. I think it's like you go through life, you get wisdom, right? And and me in particular, like I have to stay busy, or like in not that I'm gonna go back. I just feel like if I'm not busy, I'm up to no good, right? Like it's kind of like
Yeah.
not really, but you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
that's I have to be busy, right? So my inspiration is one of which just of course my kids, and I want everyone to be successful and all those things, but almost for my own sanity, like if I'm not working or spending time with my family or working out or exercising, I'm not a chill person. Like I don't even chill when I go on vacation. Like I'm always on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't sleep that much. Like I'm not encouraging anybody to do this. I just think that that's just the way that I'm wired.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm somebody who likes to achieve the unachievable. So like, no one, everyone told me I would never get pardoned, right? I went through the process of waiting a substantially long time and then getting denied of being pardoned. And then about 2 years ago, I was pardoned by the governor of Virginia, right? Something that no one thought could ever happen, right? There's just right now they won't let me in Canada because, I have a record. Well, guess what? I'm like now fixated on getting to Canada. Am I ever going to go to Canada? I have no idea, but they're not going to tell me I can't go to Canada. You see what I'm saying? Like I've gotten this mentality of like, when I work out, like I'm not the guy you say like, hey, good job. You tell me I'm soft and I'll do more. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I am.
Well, I hear two lessons in that. One is idle hands are the devil's playground. So by staying busy, you stay out of trouble. And two, you get rewarded in public for what you practice in private.
Yeah.
So that hustle, that nonstop action, it's evident. There's been some rewards and some fruit. The good book talks about you'll know him by his fruit, right?
Yeah.
You'll know him by his fruit. So, I mean, then in today, what is your because obviously some people who can't stay busy, right? They
Yeah.
or can't sit still. They get into trouble if they're not doing the right things. So there obviously has to be a little bit of discipline
Yeah.
in that, right? So you're not veering off the right path. So what is your discipline look like in your daily life today, and what are some lessons you've learned to keep
Yeah.
yourself disciplined in the right direction?
Yeah. I would say exercise is one for
Mm,
sure. I probably don't eat as good as I should, but I definitely exercise a lot. That is
mm,
a discipline that keeps me grounded. It gives me actually a time during the day where it's the one time that I don't think about anything. Like I enjoy the most painful workouts because I don't want to think of things, right? So
mm,
I think that that's kind of a big discipline, within my life. Um, and I just think like again, I'm just about kind of hard work ethic, those types of things. I will say that, look, me coming out and not telling on people and all of those things got me my respect, right, in the street. And so because of that, obviously I still, I didn't lose friends, is I guess what I'm saying.
yeah.
And but I know not to be in certain places, not to, hang out in certain environments because, like, why would I do that? I'm putting myself at risk. You know what I'm saying? And that's a discipline in and of itself because it's one of those things where you don't want to come off any kind of way of not being there for people, right? But I think also a lot of those people, understand that, like, I can't be putting myself in any kind of risk, right? And so I think again, that's a discipline in and of itself. I would say that, like, and you mentioned, the good book and those types of things. I would say that, like, I grew up, Catholic and all of that. I'd say that while I'm not a big practicing Catholic, I would say that that is something that is slowly but surely start to become something that I've noticed more in my life, in almost in the backgrounds, but like it's something that I feel almost protected by. And that helps and keeps me grounded. I've had certain things happen to me that just seem um godly or whatever you want to call it, and I think that that's kind of something that's always there. I'll give you an example. I was when I was starting this business, um I remember I was in Carolina Beach. I took my grandmother and my kids, and it's like the first trip we had ever done in a really long time. And my grandmother, before I was going out to do some business, and before I went out, she's like, "Hey, let me bless you with some agua bendita." And she's never done that, like never done that, right? And it kind of blessed me. I was like, "Oh, that's it. That was interesting." I went out and I met with somebody, an owner of a company, and he's never like thrown religion at me or anything like that. We went and met, and I met him for a 30-minute meeting turned into a 4-hour meeting,
Mm,
and like 99% of it was him telling me about how God saved him and how, it made his business this and that and that. It was, at the time, I didn't connect the two, but then the next day I went to a gym and worked out. People, the coaches come up to you, try to introduce themselves and all the stuff, right? There had been a different coach there every week. That day there was a coach I had never seen. Whatever, did the workout, I was leaving. I kind of told him, I was like, "Hey, I'm starting a business, this and that." And I went outside and I was like getting ready to leave, and for some reason I didn't leave immediately. I like took my time, which is not normal. Like, I was like just almost pacing the parking lot in a way. And he came out 15 minutes later, like with this very like worried look on his face, and he like ran up to me and he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're still here." And I was like, "Oh, what's up? What's up?" And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you that God loves you."
mm,
And it was like a weird, kind of feeling. And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Yeah, look, I know you've been going through some things, and you're starting your business and you're doing, and you're trying to do better." And I was like, "What?" And we ended up talking for 30 minutes. He like prayed for me, did all these things. And then I kind of put it together from like the time my grandma did that to have this, to have that. And I don't know what that means at the end of the day, but like those are things that, in some way, shape, or form, there's been so many things that have happened to me in my life that I often feel, like somebody's looking out for me. You know what I'm saying?
There's a big guy up there watching out for you.
Dude, there's somebody looking out.
I like to call those God shots or
Yeah.
God winks, when God like kind of winks at you and you could see his hand moving in your life, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I see you.
Yeah. Man, about a year ago, like for my birthday, I was out and we were with my daughter, with my nephew, with like a couple other people. Long story short, after we were in DC and we had went to go watch like a Nationals game, DC United game, and we were leaving and we were waiting for an Uber and there was a shootout, like about a block or two from us, had nothing to do with us, just people acting crazy. And my niece got shot, like I was standing here, my daughter was in front of me, my nephew was right there, she was on this side, and the bullets came this way, missed all of us and hit her. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's like, it's not okay that they hit her, but they missed all of us and they were coming from that direction. And it's like, you think of the times in your life where things should have happened to you and they didn't. And it's like, damn, the one time that now I'm doing good and, you know, I'm not doing anything, and like that could happen. You know what I'm saying? And it reminds you of how small you really are, right? And how thankfully, she was fine, and you know, it went in and out of her leg or whatever, and she's fine now. But like, it was just one of those things where it shows you like it could be over in 2 seconds. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm trying to be out here and be inspirational and do the right thing and try my best. And, you know, no one's perfect and I'm a big sinner, but at the same time, like, you know, I'm trying. I'm definitely trying.
Yeah. Well, I can see you're shining his light through you, right? I think ultimately that's what he wants. He wants a relationship with us, and then he wants to be glorified through us. And that's awesome that, you know, you're seeing that and you're making that transition. But one thing I want to double click on that you said was, you know, being around the right people and in the right circles is a discipline that's changed your life. And I know there's a lot of youth, there's a lot of people out there that's all they know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very hard for them to mentally see, you know, well, I have nobody else in my life. I know nothing else. So what do you say to that, you know, that younger version of you, or that young man out there or lady?
Yeah.
That doesn't have that community, that doesn't have those right people, that doesn't have that mentor that stepped into their lives and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I would say networking is extremely important, and relationships are highly undervalued. And it is something that relationships saved me in my life, right? And I've always been somebody who like puts myself purposely in different circles. And, you know, look, I was in nothing to do with real estate at one point in my life. And then I got to know people in real estate. Now I've gotten to know people in different industries. And it's very uncomfortable, you know, to get into different types of circles. But being in those other types of circles was given me opportunity and has, you know, driven me in different directions. And so I think oftentimes when you're growing up, you know, naturally you're going to stay around people you're most comfortable with, but also like, look, if everyone around you is, you know, doing stupid stuff, you're going to do stupid stuff, right? If everyone around you is, you know, a vegan or whatever, you might be a vegan, you know what I'm saying? Or like if you, you know, if everyone's working out, you're probably going to work out, right? So it's like success breeds success. And it's 100% true that when you're around people that are positive and that want to, you know, as long as, you know, you can avoid jealousy, right? Like if you see success and you see these things, like you feed off that, you know what I'm saying? You feed off those things. And so I would encourage, you know, that's even when I was younger, like I was always good at relationships, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm okay with putting myself in different, you know, and you got to just do that. Like you got to, you know, however you go about doing that, you got to go and meet other people that are not just your surroundings. You know what I'm saying? You have to. And nothing, look, I have friends that I'm down with that, dude, they have nothing to do with real estate. I've known them since I was elementary school and they're still my people. That's my home base, as they say, right? But that doesn't mean that, you know, like, you know, it's a real friend when you don't see him for years and you fall right back, right? Into like, okay, yeah, we're solid. but that's a real friend. But that doesn't mean that you can't meet other people and do different things, and you know what I'm saying, and put yourself in different circles, you know.
Yeah. What's one book or lesson that's changed your mindset forever?
Fearless is my favorite number one book. Point blank, it's called Fearless. And I'm a big like biography person. I'm with like that with movies, and I'm like that with books and with really anything. I like real, like I like experience. I like things. And I'm not knocking the books that like the motivational books and the you know, leadership books, and you know, those I'm sure those are all good reads and those are good things. I think for me, I've never personally been somebody who's needed somebody to be over my shoulder or to tell me to do this or to tell me to do that. And now that I'm, you know, CEO and owner of, you know, this company, like, yeah, it can get lonely at the top. No one's like calling you where you at today. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. So it's like, and I'm not knocking the people who need that, but I've never needed that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't gravitate towards those books. Yep. I gravitate towards people's life stories and how they were able to change things. And so that book, Fearless, is about, it's actually about a guy who, his name was Adam Brown, and he was like involved in, you know, he's like a drug addict, and he was like involved in all these things that were negative in his life. And he went on to then change his life and join the military and ended up rising to all the way to become part of the SEALs, Navy SEALs, the 6th team, you know what I mean? Like the main team. And like all these things he had to go through, even while he was in the military, he like almost fell back into drugs and things like that. And it was the story of somebody who like statistically should not have made it, and then literally made it to like the highest level of his field, right? And had all these struggles along the way, and including like at one point he was in a training thing and he like stabbed his eye on accident. Had to learn, you know, when you're shooting, you have a dominant eye. Mm-hmm. He had to learn to shoot with using the other eye. At one point he messed up his main hand that he shot with. He had to learn to shoot with the other hand, and all while then still being better than like the average person to be able to be on, you know, these crazy, I mean, you know, that's like a crazy thing to do. And so it's an awesome story. I'd encourage you to read it or listen to it, however. Absolutely. But that is something, again, that like I gravitate towards that, like towards those types of stories, because they're human and they're real, and everyone goes through things. And, you know, it's why I called, you know, me and my business partner, Shane, called our company NewStory Lending, right? Because we felt we created a new story from the communities that we came from. And so it's the same, you know, things I gravitate towards.
So to double click on that. So, because you've had a lot of mentors and people pour into you along the way, what was the best piece of advice that like resonated with you maybe earlier on or later in life that's really stuck with you?
I would say it wasn't one of my mentors in life. I don't think it was anything that he ever said. It's how he, his form of mentoring. His form of mentoring was one of which he never gave me the answer. He never, sometimes I wonder if he even knew the answer, right? But it was like he was so good at having me go find the answer and pushing me to go find it. And then you come back with the answer and it's like, no, now go again. And being hard-headed enough to like go back, you know, 40 times to try to get to the right answer or whatever, right? And he would always encourage that in me. He, even again, the times that I did know he knew the answer, he would never give it to me. You know what I'm saying? He would never let me slide. He would never just let me get it. Like he ensured that I knew how to do all of it myself, you know? And he was super good about that. And it's hard. That's hard to do, right? Like when you're really good at something, like, and somebody's asking you, you know, like I'll use my kids, for example. I don't know, just come ask me for help with math. Like I could just crank all these math problems out and the conversation could be over. Or I could sit there for 3 hours and ensure that like they know how to do it. There's a huge difference. You know what I'm saying? And you get to it it's almost like, and think about it in work, like you might get to the answer later, like time is money, right? But he was always really good about making sure that I went to go figure it out.
You learn more from your losses than often you do from your victories.
Dude, I've had so many losses, and like I've lost a lot. You know what I mean? And I think oftentimes people, you see all the, you see the wins, you know what I mean? Or you see the shine on social media or whatever the case is, and you don't necessarily ever see what it took to get there, and that's why often I try to make it a point when I speak at things like, no one needs another dude, or female going on stage telling them, how rich you are and how this and this and that. I think it's more better to explain the journey, you know what I mean? And to explain what it took, and to show the humility and the empathy and, being authentic, and like those things I think I've lacked a lot in leadership for a long time. And those things are things, again, that I gravitate towards,
It's interesting you say that, because there's such a parallel there between that and the good book. Because if you look at it, it's a bunch of autobiographies, it's a bunch of stories.
Yeah.
Like that's often how it's said. I forgot the author that said it, but there's a saying that we often learn significantly more. I mean, there's been many studies that we learn more from stories than we do from facts.
Yeah.
It resonates with us more. So, but I did want to ask you this. What is one mantra that like you live by, or that lives rent free in your head?
Yeah. A mantra? I would say, look, man, I gravitate again towards more like hard work. Like, I hate to keep it that simple, but that's like what it is to me. Yeah. Like hard work and just going through the grind and like doing things that, trying to achieve the unachievable. Like those things are like what drive me. You know what I'm saying? Like they really, really do. Like when something is so hard, like I get excited by it.
But what do you say to yourself? Because I've learned self-talk is a big piece of that.
Yeah, I tell myself, to not be soft. I really do. I might say other colorful language, you know what I'm saying, to myself, but but I often do that. Like if I'm going through an exercise, or I'm going through this, or I'm going through that, I don't, and I don't know if this is good or bad, like, but this is what works for me. Yeah. Like I don't, say like, oh, like, Juan, you're the greatest, or Juan, you're this. I almost speak to myself negatively in a way like, don't be soft, don't be a bitch, don't be this, don't be that. And those things like push me to do it, to do the thing, right? Well, again, whether it's an exercise or whether it's this or whether that. I don't, my kids may not love me saying that, because when they act soft about something, I'll be the first one to tell them to stop being soft about it, right? But I also grew up in a different era. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not the, I have emotional intelligence, but I'm not the, let's cry on each other's shoulder type thing, and that's going to get us through it. I think that pushing yourself to basically convince yourself that like you can do it, right? And to convince yourself that like, yeah, I know it's not easy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know, nothing in my life has been easy. I was born with, I was born with my hand like this. And it's like everything when I was, when I was a kid, it's like, oh, you can't, you won't be able to do this, or you won't be able to do these things. And that was like, oh yeah, like, all right, you know what I'm saying? We're going to see, And so that is how I am when I talk to myself, and I don't use the big words and the this and that. It's just very simple. Like basically get your ass up and let's go, Let's go.
Suck it up.
Right. I might have been in the military in my past life or something like that. Cause I'm definitely like, yeah, suck it up and let's go,
So shifting gears a little bit, What is your definition of wealth today, and how has it changed over time?
Man, for me, like the biggest wealth that I ever created in my life was relationships. I recently spoke at an event, and it was a wealth building conference. And they were like, hey, can you come speak about wealth? And, the first thing that, I've been able to gain, some in my life. And the first thing that, naturally you gravitate towards, okay, well, let me go up there and let me speak about how I built this business and how I, made this amount of money, and how I, talk about, different tax strategies or different this or that, whatever the case, right? That's what most people would do, right? Right. And I sat there and I really thought about like how did I get here? Really, how did I get here? Yeah, hard work. Yeah, mentor. Yeah, this. Yeah, that. But no one has ever gotten anywhere alone, right? It was, in my opinion, like somebody has always helped you, and there was all those relationships. And the way that I framed that keynote that I did was around, it was like a savings account that I was able to tap into over time and call different relationships when I needed them. But what made it so special is that some of those relationships I had for 20 years and I never asked anything about that. They were true relationships where we truly cared about each other and we truly maintained that relationship. The minute that somebody thinks that you're only calling them when you need something, like that's not a real relationship. You know what I'm saying? And so the fact that I was able to, call so many people, and I realized, I hadn't been an asshole for the last 20 years. Like I was able to call a lot of bat phones and say, hey man, I need this when I needed it. Like that is then led to financial stability, financial gains, financial things. And I ensured also that we all win, right? Everybody's got to win, right? Everybody's got to eat. It can't be one-sided. You know what I'm saying? And you got to surround yourself with people that want to see you win and you want to see them win, right? And so that is like my biggest driver, dude, has been relationships, right? And again, like everything that came around it, yeah, you need to be good at other things. Don't get me wrong. But if you can't get in that room or that person won't take your call or that person won't help you go from here to there, then it's not going to mean anything. How I was able to also, even from like the pardon thing, like when I went through, and originally I went through a lawyer and that I felt pretty robbed by that dude, but like I got denied also. Like the second time I had built relationships with certain people that I was able to navigate it in a different way, right? Had I not built those relationships, I probably wouldn't have never got it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't enough for me to say, oh, I've done all these great things over my life. And here it is. Well, now it needs to be structured in a certain way. It needs to be put in front of the right people at the right time. And then you need to be able to navigate that, and the only way you do that is through relationships,
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how does one provide value when relationships are so important? But I think you answered that. It's making sure everybody eats, making sure everybody wins, finding ways for other people to win.
Yeah.
So two final questions.
And time, I would say, and giving your time, right?
Time.
I think that's, again, I
unpack that a little bit.
I will always say, as somebody who has had time taken away from them, like time is the most valuable thing, and it's so much, you get invited to something or whatever, right? Like no one, the most genuine relationships are not because, hey, you're going to show up and give them a gift, right? If it's a party or whatever. Like I think more people care that you took your time to show up and be there, right? Yeah. And I make it as simple as, again, I think of my kids, right? Like I think of all of the gifts that I gave my first daughter, and she remembers 0 of them or cares about 0 of them. And the child in her wanted the time, wanted the relationship. And I try to duplicate that as best as I can, like in my life. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect at it, but I try. Like I try to genuinely maintain a relationship. Not like people are my kids or anything like that, but that form of relationship where time is more important, communication, checking in, you know what I'm saying? Like I think so many people, especially in business, feel that, because we're not doing business, then like it's not as an important relationship. Well, like you might not do business today, but in some future, you don't know what's going to happen. Like you don't know 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you know what I mean? Or nothing. Maybe it just becomes a good friend, right? But don't get fixated on, like, I've heard different mindsets, and to each his own, where it's like, oh, like if that's not bringing me value, then why am I spending my time on it? I can only have a certain amount of time. Yeah. That's a different mindset. That's okay. I'm not saying that, but I choose to maintain and build and again, that's like a savings account, right? At some point in some future, whether they need something from you or you need something from them, as long as there's been a genuine relationship along the way, I think it's okay to ask that later, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think to double click on that, it's the question there is, how do you discern where to spend your time, who to spend your time with?
Yeah. I don't overthink it. I really don't
Sounds
know.
like you let the spirit lead you.
I really don't overthink it, man.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes it's kind of weird, but things just fall into place, right? Like when you and I met, right? It's like, oh, when are you going to be in Vegas? Well, I'm happen to be in Vegas, right? And it was like, I didn't have to like figure out how to go out of my way to come here, right? It just naturally just kind of happened, and it happened when it happened. Tomorrow, I was asked to speak in LA, and I didn't pick the date. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the date happened to be the date that I was already going to be, right here, basically. And that just kind of happened. And so I think that I follow that. I'm a little bit of a free spirit when it comes to that. I'm a super spontaneous person. Like, when I was younger, it was like, hey, it's 2 a.m. We're going to Miami at 6 a.m. Like, and we're leaving. Like, no plans. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, that's just how I've always been. And so I don't overthink it, Look, do I have to say no to certain things? Of course. Yeah. Like, there's only so many hours in the day, right? But I do prioritize as best possible my family. Yeah. Right. Of course. Right. I try to make sure I'm there at my kids' games, and
that's when maturity comes in.
Yeah, that's a given. Or I hope it's a given for people. Like, prioritize your family. Do that. Right. But secondary to that, I'm just kind of I go where the wind takes me a little bit. And then, like, I would say, because I don't try to, I'm not so fixated on, like, if I do this and it's going to give me this, I don't go with the biggest of thing that I'm trying to find. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes, like, I do get business from it, and sometimes I don't. And it's like, and that's okay either way, like, to me, because again, I value the relationships.
Well, it sounds like you you walk through the doors that God opens, and that's awesome.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, brother.
Oh, of course. So, finish the sentence. My story proves that.
That resilience is something that can take you to the highest places in life. I'm extremely resilient. I am. I went through an exercise with my business partner when we started this company, and it was this guy. Shout out to Rich Keller. Is what he does. He does these. He believes that a brand is defined by one word, not an entire thing. That every brand and every story, person, whatever, is defined by one word. And so our one word that we came up with is barrier breakers. In fact, we even went as far as to trademark the term breaking barriers to homeownership. And that breaking barriers came out of us being resilient people, both in our lives, right? We've been people that, statistically speaking, shouldn't be where we are, right? And it was because of all the failures, all the no's, all the this and the that, and us never ever giving up, and always just know, like, I'm gonna do it. Like your parents used to say, "Si se puede, right?
Right? Si se puede,
right?
Yeah.
And, like, that's just how I am, man. So yeah, I would say that's what defines a lot of how my values.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts for the viewers?
Look, I'd say, just in general, like, well, first of all, I appreciate, you let me be here today with you. Thank you for the blessing of your time. I think time is important, as I mentioned. Look, I think the big thing for me is that what I'm trying to do is just inspire at this point. I think for so long, we were talking about this a little bit before we started, where, and I'm sure this happens to women too, but as men, and being prideful, and being me being Latino and all of those things, I think that you often are sheltered in terms of the things that you're willing to share. And no one has looked at me any differently now that I'm sharing my story, right? And everyone has a story, right? And I hope to inspire people with mine. And I hope to, again, give my time more than just handing out money everywhere. Like that's the easy way, again, in my opinion. And I hope to truly inspire others, right? And I'm hoping that, you know, this has done it, or other things that I'm planning on doing into the future will continue to do that. I encourage people to share their story, to not be sheltered, to, you know, whether that means you're talking to your therapist in private or you're just talking to whoever, right? Things that you keep inside, you know, will really destroy you. I know that firsthand. And so it's been very much, you know, weight lifted off my shoulders, sharing things. And I think that the fact that it's started, I've received so much outpouring of support after I've done these things, right? And it's led to these things and that things. I think that's just a symbol of life. Like, say yes, go on to the next thing. Say yes, don't, you know what I mean? And keep kind of riding that wave. So that's what I encourage people to do.
So yeah, we were talking about this earlier. Very often the thing that we think disqualifies us is actually what qualifies us to speak into the life of someone else. I hear this very often, where we're, you know, whether it be in counseling or mentorship, you know, you just don't get it. You're not like me. They don't, my family will never understand. But then when we find somebody in life, a mentor, somebody that God sends into our life that can just completely change the trajectory of our path. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for the time that you've given us today and the time that you continue to give. For anybody who's listening and wants to continue to follow your story, where can they reach you at? Where can they see you? Like,
thank you. So it's the Juan Rodas. So JUANRODAS, the Juan Rodas, on all social platforms. I'm actually getting ready to also launch a website, juanrodas.com, which will show a lot of the content that I've been creating in terms of from like a keynote speaking perspective or different podcasts or different things of that nature. Also follow NewStory Lending on all different platforms. That's you know, the mortgage company that I own with my business partner, Shane. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're going to be in LA tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm flying tonight actually over there, but I'll be speaking in LA tomorrow evening at La Plaza de la Raza from 4 to 9, I think is what the event is. And I'm going to be the main keynote speaker, speaking about my story and giving some background on that.
Nice. And he's going to be back in February for the NARUP event.
Yes. February 12th, right? 12th to Thursday, I think that is. I'll be speaking at the Greater Nevada chapter, I think it's what it's called. Also be this keynote speaker there. Also be in November, actually, so a couple weeks from now, I'll be in Philly at a Now Rep event as well, speaking at some stuff over there. So
across the country.
Yeah, man. Wherever, you know.
Find them across the country. So thank you, Juan.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This is Tony Medina. And remember, every next level of your life will demand a new version of you. Keep shifting. Juan Rodas is living proof that circumstances do not define your ceiling. From earlier setbacks to higher degrees, from fatherhood to financial leadership, Juan's story is a reminder that resilience is built, not born. If today's conversation has inspired you, take a moment and share it with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over. It's just ready for a rewrite.